we've heard a great deal. We've had some really excellent presentations on security sector reform in the field. And what I'd like to talk about this morning is security sector reform in the Capitol, where the battles can be much more difficult, than they are in the field. My own experience with security sector reform began in 1994. At that point, the United States, in cooperation with Canada and France, was in Haiti, where we created the first police academy in Haiti's history and trained the first civilian police force in Haiti's history. Within a year, thanks to the cooperation between these three countries, there were 5,000 members of a newly trained Haitian National Police Force on the streets. Smartly uniformed, well-trained, they were out doing their jobs. Unfortunately, however, efforts to rebuild the Haitian judicial system did not go forward, and very little, if anything, was done about assisting Haiti's totally inadequate prison system. At the same time, little effort was expended on reforming the Ministry of Justice, which controlled the police. Little effort was made to reform the executive or to go educate the newly elected parliament on its responsibilities in security sector reform. So within a couple of years, what happened? Members of the Haitian National Police began to execute their prisoners out of frustration because they did not want to see once again criminals that they had arrested either get themselves out of jail by bribing a judge or bribing a jailer, or simply walk away from prison facilities that didn't have any locks. This experience pointed to the importance of a comprehensive approach to security sector reform. But unfortunately, it's not a lesson that was learned, as we've heard. In 2007, I went back to Haiti to do a study of the successful UN crackdown on gangs in Port-au-Prince. What I found there, as you've heard, is another police training program well underway, this one led by the United Nations. But the plans to reform the judicial system were still only in the planning stage. We got an excellent briefing from a UN official on what was out there for the future. And then there was a tremendous amount of hand-wringing over Haiti's totally inadequate and inhumane and unsafe prisons, where at that point, all of the people that had been arrested by the UN in their roundup on the gangs were incarcerated. Now, security sector reform is a relatively new concept. It covers the highly political and complex task of transforming the institutions and organizations that are responsible for dealing with security threats to a state and to its citizens. Now, not everyone accepts the various definitions for security sector reform, and there are heated debates over what institutions and activities fall inside security sector reform and what institutions fall out. There are also questions about SSR's most effective application. Security sector reform can be used in conflict prevention. It can be used in conflict management. But perhaps it is most applicable, and has certainly received the most attention, as we've heard this morning, in post-conflict reconstruction. After repeated failures in various peace and stability operations, it is increasingly acknowledged that train and equip programs, exercises where the international community goes in and simply trains, equips, and puts security forces on the street, don't work. Instead, a comprehensive whole-of-government approach is required on the part of the intervention force and the host government to simultaneously reform all of the institutions, military and civilian, that are involved with providing security. The goal in this case is a safe and secure society that enjoys good governance and operates under the rule of law. Now, what has been the more recent history of U.S. policy and involvement in SSR? Since the 1994 invention in Haiti, the United States has participated in peace and stability operations in the Balkans, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in several other countries. The U.S. has carried out SSR-related activities, in fact, sometimes at a very hypo tempo, training police and military personnel, advising host governments, providing equipment and financing, etc. However, this has not been done in a comprehensive or coordinated manner. Government departments have acted independently, or with minimal coordination. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we've heard about SSR under fire, implementing programs in these kind of conflicted environments have resulted in anomalies. We have in Iraq and Afghanistan a situation where the United States military and the Defense Department is responsible for training the local police. And the people that are actually out there doing it on the U.S. side are soldiers and commercial and hires of a commercial firm who are under contract to the Department of State. So it's probably not altogether surprising that the police side of the assistance program in Afghanistan and Iraq does not work particularly well. In 2004, the United States endorsed the OACE DAC guidelines on SSR along with other member states. But since then, there has been no formal government structures in place to promote SSR until the final months of the Bush administration. In November 2008, an informal SSR discussion group that had been meeting from time to time within the U.S. government was transformed into a committee which was part of the formal interagency government structure. Now, this committee was a committee of a sub-policy coordinating committee which dealt with civil-military relations, and then that sub-policy coordinating committee reported to a policy coordinating committee that dealt with development. And so the SSR committee was down at the bottom, and if that sounds like to you like the basement of the interagency U.S. governmental structure, you're right. I mean, it's possible to get any lower. Then, literally in the closing days of the Bush administration, in January 2009, the administration published a set of U.S. policy guidelines on SSR that was approved by the Department of State, the Department of Defense, and the U.S. Agency for International Development, and very handsome publication. The document includes a policy statement, a definition of terms, a statement of roles and responsibilities of various government departments, basic principles and steps in program implementation, and it does all this in 8 pages with a lot of white spaces in the text. The document, fortunately, I think, is fully consistent with the OACE DAC guidelines. And the guiding principles that this document lays out are a pretty familiar list. Support host country ownership, incorporate principles of good governance and respect for human rights, balance operational support with institutional reform, link security and justice, foster transparency, and for goodness sake, do no harm. The directive for program implementation is also familiar. SSR programs should involve the following steps: an assessment, strategic planning, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation. So, after all of this, where are we now? As we are at the outset of a new administration with a new set of people coming in to take office. So, for the United States, I think the good news is that the SSR policy guidelines document was in fact published, and that was a struggle. The SSR Interagency Committee that was established under the Bush administration continues to meet regularly with a full complement of government representatives present. Currently, this committee is working on a couple of projects. It is looking at designing an SSR assessment tool, and it is looking at developing guidelines for implementing SSR policy by the various government agencies represented. It's contemplating conducting a pilot assessment using its new tool in a country to be selected later. And it's also thinking long-term about the goals of doing something about metrics. The bad news is that only the State Department, the Defense Department, and the Agency for International Development actually signed this document. And then they were only able to get clearance up to the level of Assistant Secretary. The other agencies that they had hoped to sign on, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, the Energy Department, and the Treasury Department, for a variety of different reasons, failed to join and failed to endorse this document. The Obama administration has not yet formally reviewed the document, nor has the Obama administration announced a position on SSR, nor has it even laid out its organization of its interagency structure. In reality, for those of you that watch American politics, you're seeing that once again, we're doing something we do every 8 years. We decapitate our government, we throw out all the people that worked in the administration, and then we go about the job of replacing them all by putting them all through extensive background checks, interviews, a selection process, appearance before Congress, and finally they're installed. And so we have a lot of vacant offices in the major departments of government around Washington that would be concerned with this issue, and it's going to take some time before all of those officials are in place and they can turn their attention to this task. I think it's fair to say that the United States recognizes that SSR is a concept that's extremely useful in providing a framework for organizing a disparate collection of activities, particularly in post-conflict operations. The U.S. government, particularly at the working level, is working very hard to refine our understandings concerning various aspects of SSR activity. A couple of weeks ago, a bunch of us decamped to go out to Monterey, California, which is always a really difficult thing to do. And we spent a week near the beach meeting with officials from our own government, but also people that were brought in from all over the world, including DCAF and European representatives and people from the field, to talk about what is required to develop an assessment tool. And we're hoping there'll be a lot more conferences like that, because particularly in the winter months. But otherwise, a lot of work being done at the basic level. In 2009, the Defense Authorization Act, passed by Congress, formally established a new Civilian Response Corps. This Civilian Response Corps will be staffed by experts in a broad range of skills needed particularly in the initial stages of peace and stability operations. And this includes policemen, judicial officials, civil government administrators, and public services engineers. The recruitment of the first 250 of these first responders is now underway. About 12 of these people will have the designation SSR officer. And so they will be a cadre when they're recruited of SSR specialists, something the U.S. government hasn't had before. That's the good news. The bad news is nobody quite knows what these people will be asked to do, and the training program that's supposed to train them to do it is not in place yet, but we'll see. So given the general policy orientation of the incoming Obama administration and the personalities that make up its highest leadership, most people in Washington think there is a very good chance that SSR will be moved to the top of the administration's agenda when there's time. At this point, however, the focus is primarily on dealing with the practical matters of fighting 2 wars and staffing the government. And so the focus in Washington today is on how to deal with the civilian aspect of the surge into Afghanistan. What will various government agencies do? Where will they find the personnel? How will they deploy them? What programs will they implement? But this is not, unfortunately, being done on a comprehensive whole of government matter. It's being done in the good old-fashioned way, institution by institution. My own organization, the United States Institute of Peace, got into the business of SSR about a year ago. I'm the director of the SSR program there. We have organized a series of public forums where we've had panel presentations with experts like you've heard this morning on a variety of issues concerned with SSR. We've had the international perspective, the NGO perspective. We've talked about the role of the private sector. We've talked about gender in SSR. And so that's outgoing. We've published our first report on SSR, which is a primer on SSR, which is available on our website under publications. It's a sort of how-to and what is it all about for people that are just getting into this field. And in the future, we hope to do a great deal more, and we're grateful for this opportunity to participate in this event, which I think is an excellent idea and a way to get the word out about this creating an extremely critical concept. Thank you very much.